You know that moment when something hard is happening and you can feel yourself going to one of two places? Either you get so busy, so productive, so focused on the next thing that you almost forget to feel it, or you sink so deep into it that getting back up feels impossible. Yeah, me too. Most of us who have lived with complex trauma know both of these places intimately. Some of us pitch a tent there. And for a long time, I truly thought that those were the only two options: push through or fall apart. But what if there is a third way? What if the most healing thing that you can do for yourself, especially as a CPTSD survivor, is neither one of those? And that's what today's episode is all about. We're talking about the middle path, what it is, why it's so hard for trauma survivors specifically, and what it actually looks like to find your way back to it again and again. So let's just dive in.
Welcome to Reclaiming Me, a trauma-informed podcast helping women with complex PTSD heal the lasting impact of childhood attachment wounds from parents and caregivers, so you can finally release people-pleasing and perfectionism and learn to trust in relationships, beginning with the one you have with yourself. I'm your host, Cindy Payne, therapist, trauma specialist, and a woman who has walked this path both personally and professionally.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I'm so looking forward to today's episode talking about the middle path. And this is a genuine lived experience for me. And it's one that I notice becomes very prominent in my world during times of big change, because everything that I know to be certain and true about my life as it is currently is about to not look like that anymore. And so I personally have this tendency to either block it completely out and just go into hyperdrive functioning or over functioning, or I become so deeply engrossed with the emotions and the physical felt sense of fear sometimes that can permeate my body when impending change is happening, that I lose my way and I have a hard time bringing myself back to the present moment. And so that is why I wanted to showcase this concept, because time and time again, I am reminded of what it looks like, feels like in my body to return to this middle path. And when I learn a concept that helps me with my healing, I feel like it is my responsibility to then pass that along. But before we get into the meat of the episode today, here is what I hope that you will walk away with today. And number one is that the middle path is not a compromise. Okay. It's not about feeling okay or staying neutral. It is about holding two true things at the same time. And for CPTSD survivors, this is genuinely hard, and it's also genuinely learnable. So number two is that your nervous system was trained by your trauma to live at the extremes. The hypervigilance, the shutdown, the all or nothing thinking. This is not a character flaw. These are adaptations. And the beautiful thing about adaptations is that we can change those adaptations when we no longer need them as much. And finally, number three, finding your way back to the middle is not a one-time arrival. It is a practice. It is a return. And there are real concrete tools, both from DBT, which stands for dialectical behavior therapy, and from your own life that can help you get there. Okay, so let's go. Part one, what is the middle path? And why does it matter so much for CPTSD survivors specifically? So, as you've heard me talk on this podcast, if you're a regular listener, I am in a season that has brought some very significant transitions my way. And it seems to have happened all at once, as these things tend to do. A move to California, closing my in person practice in Frisco, Texas, shifting to fully virtual work for right now, and somewhere woven into it all, the quieter transition of an emptied nest. And these are changes that I welcomed. I signed up for. I participated in the decisions that led to a lot of these things. And yet they are still asking something of me. And what I have noticed, what I have kept catching myself doing is swinging between two extremes. So, what that looks like for me right now is either I'm in deep logistics mode, so keeping so busy with the newness of it all, the packing, the how are we going to get our stuff there? What are we selling? Where's this going to fit? Do I even want this in my life anymore? So all those logistics, really what they're doing is they're allowing me to forget to feel it. So that's one extreme. Or the other extreme is that I feel it so fully and deeply that the middle feels so far away from me. So I can become so entrenched in the emotion, hence the Noah Kahn album listening on straight for 2 straight weeks, that it's like it can almost take me out. And this is not a new pattern for me. If you're living with CPTSD, I'd be willing to bet that it's not new for you either. And here is why. When we experience chronic early trauma in our formative years, the kind that shapes how our nervous system develops, we often learn that the middle isn't safe. Calm meant something was about to go wrong. Stillness meant that there was danger lurking around the corner. And so we learned to stay alert, we learned to stay moving, and we learned to stay ready. Or on the flip side, we learned to collapse, we learned to disappear, or maybe we learned to become very small and very quiet. And we vacillate between these two states constantly as CPTSD survivors. And again, these were brilliant adaptations. They kept us safe when nothing else could. But now, in adulthood, in relationships, in therapy, in the ordinary moments of our week, they tend to create a lot of suffering. And so I want to bring in a concept here from Dr. Dan Siegel. He is a clinical professor of psychiatry at UCLA, and he's one of the most accessible voices in interpersonal neurobiology. And what I love about Siegel, so many things, is that he describes mental well-being as using this beautiful metaphor of a river. So I invite you to imagine a river that's flowing between two banks. The water in the middle is moving, it is flexible, it is alive. It is what Dan Siegel calls the river of integration. And that's where health lives. That's where we feel most regulated, we feel most connected and able to respond rather than just react. But on the other side, but on either side of that river are the banks. And one bank is chaos. So the flooded, overwhelmed, dysregulated state where everything feels too much and we can't find our ground. And the other bank is rigidity. That's where the shutdown, the numbness, the going through the motions place where we've cut ourselves off from feeling in order to function. That's where that lives. And Dan Siegel points out that when we are suffering in our nervous systems, in our relationships, in our inner lives, we're almost always stuck on one of those two banks. And the work of healing is learning to return to the river, to the flowing, integrated middle. Does that sound familiar? Because it should. It's exactly what the middle path is asking of us. And for CPTSD survivors, this maps almost perfectly onto our nervous system experience. So think about hypervigilance and emotional flooding and intrusive memories lying on the chaos bank. And on the other side is where dissociation, emotional numbness, and the sense of watching your life from behind the glass, that's the rigidity bank. And so the nervous system is shaped by chronic early trauma, and it has learned to ping pong between those two places because the middle, the calm, regulated river of life, never felt safe enough to stay in for any length of time. And DBT, again, it stands for dialectical behavior therapy, has this concept that I think speaks directly to this. And it comes from the very word dialectical itself, which simply means the integration of opposites. And the idea that two things that seem contradictory can both be true at the same time is really what we're talking about here. So I can love someone and be furious with them. I can be doing my best and still need to do better. I can be really grateful for a transition in my life, and I can still grieve what I am leaving behind. So something can be right and still be hard. It can be chosen and still carry grief. And that last one is the one that I keep returning to because as CPTSD survivors, we often believe that if we choose something, if we wanted it, if we worked for it, then that means that we are not allowed to struggle with it. We think that grief is a sign that we made the wrong choice, but I'm here to tell you that that is just not how it works. And the middle path asks us to hold both. And I want to go a little bit deeper and walk you through 3 specific ideas from DBT's middle path framework. And then I want to connect each one to what life actually looks like when you're healing from complex trauma. And the first one, again, is dialectics. So the both and. And just to give you a little bit of a history on DBT, DBT is a modality of therapy that was developed by Dr. Marsha Linehan, who was herself a trauma survivor. At the core of her approach is this really radical idea that acceptance and change are not opposites, that you can fully accept where you are right now, and you can simultaneously be working towards something different. That you don't have to earn your healing by just suffering enough first. And for CPTSD survivors, the dialectical trap often looks like this. Well, I can't move forward until I have fully processed the past. Or on the flip side, I need to just get over it and move on. And that's one that I really know intimately because I was raised in a home where, difficult emotions were not tolerated, let alone seen often. And so I think it can force us into that thinking of, well, I have to fully process it. I have to fully check the box so that I can start to be able to live my life. And that is just not how it works, right? The middle path says both. So you grieve and you grow. You feel it and you function. You honor what happened to you and you refuse to be defined by it. And folks, that is not easy. It requires a nervous system that has some capacity to tolerate the tension of not resolving into one or the other. But here's the good news, and that is that capacity can be built slowly with a lot of support and with a lot of practice. So the second is validation. And I want to specify this by saying self-validation. One of the quieter wounds, in my opinion, of complex trauma is that most of us were not validated growing up. So we were told that our feelings were too much, or perhaps not enough, or they just simply weren't seen altogether. And so we learned to do to ourselves what was done to us. We minimize, we override, and we tell ourselves to stop being so sensitive, to pull it together, and to not make such a big deal out of things. But DBT teaches validation as an actual skill because it is. And the most important person to learn to validate is yourself. And this doesn't mean that you agree with every thought that you have, but you acknowledge that your emotional response makes sense given what you've been through, that there's a logic to it, that it means something. This is the middle path in emotional terms. It is that space between suppressing what you feel and being consumed by it. It is the place where you can turn towards resentment, you can turn towards the fear and the grief, and you can ask it what it needs to tell you rather than pushing it away or drowning in it. And I've been doing that work myself. I've shared on here before that resentment has never felt like a particularly welcome emotion for me. I was raised to steer away from it. I witnessed many examples of how resentment really hardened people in my family and became really difficult to connect with them. I have witnessed resentment being weaponized in my family of origin. And so, of course, it's going to be an emotion that I have challenges with. But in my own healing, what I've been learning is to turn towards it with a curiosity and ask, where is the unspoken boundary here? What is this feeling trying to protect me from? And that is self-validation in action. And it is quiet and it is very unglamorous and it is genuinely transformative. So the third is walking the path as a skill. This is the actual practice. And so originally when I was introduced to the middle path, I just thought, oh, I'm just supposed to live here. I'm just supposed to learn what it takes to float down the river of well-being. And if I can just, practice and do it well enough, then I will never end up on either bank of chaos or rigidity. And then life happens and you realize, oh, I'm missing the point. So again, in DBT, walking the middle path is described as finding balance between too much and too little. So finding balance between permissiveness and rigidity. Finding balance between dependence and isolation. Between being so open that you have no sense of self and being so closed that nothing and no one can ever reach you. And for CPTSD survivors specifically, this often shows up in relationships. So we tend to go to the extremes, over trusting someone or never trusting someone, over functioning or completely withdrawing and saying yes to everything or shutting people out entirely. And the middle path in relationships asks, can I stay connected to myself while also staying open to you? Can I trust my own read on a situation and still remain curious about yours? And can I ask for what I need without believing that needing things makes me a burden? And these are not small asks, but they are learnable. And in my clinical opinion, they are some of the most important relational skills a CPTSD survivor can develop. And that is why we go to therapy. That is why we listen to podcasts. And that is why we have to practice giving ourselves permission to mess this up. Because again, how are we supposed to know what this feels like automatically if we have never spent much time walking the middle path? So I want to talk a little bit about what it looks like in real life as we start to practice this, because again, the middle path is easy for me to describe it, and it's really genuinely hard to practice. So let me give you some examples of what returning to it actually looks like. It looks like sitting with a feeling without immediately trying to fix it or escape it. Not because the feeling is particularly comfortable, but because you've decided to stay in relationship with yourself, even when it's hard. For me, it looks like going to acupuncture, or maybe you have a different somatic practice, not because I have it all figured out, but because I know that when I am either in rigidity or chaos, my nervous system needs something that words can't necessarily always reach. I have done a ton of somatic work over the years. And what I have learned is that the body really does have its own language. And sometimes the middle path runs right through that. It could also look like telling somebody that you love that you're struggling instead of either pretending you're fine or collapsing completely. It looks like asking for help without catastrophizing and saying no without disappearing. It looks like noticing that you've drifted to the busy extreme or the sinking extreme, and then coming back and not shaming yourself for drifting, but you're just coming back. And for those of us with CPTSD, that return is the work. So it's not the arrival, it's not the staying, but it's the return. And I think about Siegel's river metaphor here a lot. He says that integration isn't a state that we achieve. It is a process that we participate in. And I love this because the river is always moving and we're always going to be pulled towards one bank or the other. And the question isn't whether we drift. The question is whether we notice and whether we know how to find our way back to the current. And here's something that I want to say directly to you if you are in a season of transition right now. And this is also something that I have to keep saying to myself. The middle path is not about feeling okay. It is about staying in relationship with yourself, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. It's about allowing healing to happen at the pace that it actually needs, not the pace that we wish it would be. It's about giving yourself permission to say out loud, this was chosen and this is still hard. This is right and this still carries so much grief. You don't have to earn the middle by getting it together. You just have to be willing to keep returning over and over again. And if you're interested in reading a little bit more about the middle path, I do have a blog post up on my website. If you go to cindypayne.com and you click blog, because I felt really called to write about this because we just finished what one of my clients referred to as Maycember, which I love that, meaning all the chaos that comes with May, the Mother's Day, the graduations, the celebrations, the ending of another year. And although that can feel really joyous and celebratory, it also can bring up a lot of uncertainty, a lot of tension, a lot of grief. And that can take me right out of the middle path and put me on the riverbank of rigidity or chaos. And with everything that I have in my world that is changing, I have been finding myself kind of in struggle again. And so, what that looks like for me is my sleep gets really jacked up. I get an upset stomach. I start over functioning again. I start trying to control what I feel that I can control. And I know that I'm doing it. I'm very conscious of my patterns, but I don't always heed the warning call, I guess. It takes me a minute to kind of go, oh, okay, here I am again. And so, about the third or fourth day of sleep struggles, I was like, what can I do? How can I get back to this? I've booked my therapy appointments. I'm reaching out to my friends who I trust to support me through this, but I'm still really struggling. And so I was like, oh my gosh, acupuncture. And for me, that has always been a tool that I have used when I can't talk my way into feeling differently, because it has to do with energy in the body and blood flow and circulation. And it's just a brilliant form of healing. And I don't understand hardly any of it, but I put my faith in the Chinese medicine and I let it do its thing. And it has never failed me. It has gotten me um, back to my river of well-being where I can sleep and I can think and I can function. And I just think that it's miraculous. And so that's how I fixed it. That's how I returned to the middle path. And again, it doesn't mean that I haven't veered back to rigidity or chaos, but I'm just quicker to come back into alignment. And I'm a lot kinder with myself when I am trying to return to the middle. So acupuncture might not be your thing. I have some friends that are like, I would never stick needles in my body to try to get back into the river of well-being. Okay. So find what that is for you, though, that feels safe and that you feel semi-knowledgeable about and trusting with, and go do that. So just a quick review of what I really wanted to leave you with today. And that is, number one, the middle path is not a compromise. It is the integration of opposites, both and, not either or. So two things can be true at the same time, and learning to hold that tension is one of the most healing things you can do. Number two, your nervous system was trained by trauma to live at the extremes, what Dan Siegel calls the banks of the river. So chaos on one side, rigidity on the other. And this is not a flaw. This is history. And with the right support and the right practice, the history does not have to be your future. And then finally, the middle path is a return. It's not a destination. You are going to drift, and that is human. That's especially human for those of us with complex trauma histories. The practice is in the coming back gently without the shame again and again. So this week, I want to invite you to notice which extreme you tend toward when things get hard. Are you a pusher through, a sinker, maybe both, depending on the day? Just notice that. You don't have to fix it this week. You don't have to be further along than you are. Just get curious about where you go and what it would feel like to take one small step back towards the middle. And if you want to go deeper on any of this, the midweek reframe this week is a shorter follow-up to this conversation. So I'm going to give you a single practical question to carry into your week that connects directly to what we talked about today. Also, I'm still collecting questions for my upcoming Ask Me Anything episode on CPTSD. So, whatever you've been sitting with and haven't known who to ask, send it my way. Email or Instagram DM me. They are both in the show notes, and I do read every single one. So, thank you so much for being here with me today. Thank you for doing this work, this quiet, invisible, non-linear, very sacred work of healing. It matters, and you matter. I'll see you in the midweek reframe. Take really good care of yourselves.
Thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope you leave feeling a little lighter, a little more grounded, and a little closer to trusting yourself and your inner experience. If this episode resonated with you, please follow or subscribe so future conversations can meet you when they're needed. And if someone came to mind while you were listening, consider sharing this episode with them. That's one of the ways this work reaches the people who need it the most. You can find me on Instagram at Cindy Payne Rooted, and you can also visit me at cindypayne.com, where you'll find all episode links, blog posts, practice updates, and a free people-pleasing style quiz designed to help you notice your patterns with more compassion. And remember, every small step towards healing, self-trust, and presence matters. You are worthy of this journey. Thanks, everyone.